Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Okay, this is the R.P.F. Scientology's prison camp. They keep children in the R.P.F. as well. This is dated Tuesday, November 27th, 2012. By the way, this fence, this Constantine wire, is still up, and this is located in Hemet, California. Hemet police are all they're fine with all this. The fence that you see above is located at Scientology's gold base, not too far from the city of Hemet, California, in the U.S. As you can see, the stainless steel razor spikes point both ways, not only to keep people out, but to keep those on the inside from escaping. Did I mention this is a church? Can it possibly be that the Church of Scientology has its own concentration camp? Read on. Possibly the worst policies L. Ron Hubbard ever came up with were the policies that constitute the Rehabilitation Project Force, R.P.F. for short. Scientology upper management will tell you that it is a voluntary work-study religious retreat to help rehabilitate C organization members and get them back up to where they can be productive members of the group. Productive. It is actually a prison camp to punish those C organization members that have angered management in some way or another. Prestigious executives. Some are thrown into this work punishment detail, including children, you guys, just because they wish to leave the Sea Org or Scientology. Just see Nathan Rich's book, Scythe Telepo. Once in, members are in and punished until they are back in the good graces. Members include children. You see the tricky dicky stuff people use? Members include children. Until they are back in the good graces of the management. Prestigious executives. This has been known to last up to 6 years and more. Members of the R.P.F. are not allowed to communicate with anyone outside of the R.P.F. They are not allowed to eat at the same times as other staff. Children. They are only allowed to sleep in separate quarters, usually filthy places, with only one bathroom for all members. They are not allowed to communicate to their friends or family by phone or letter unless it would cause a flap, bad PR. See Jenna Miscavige's book, Beyond Belief. She went through that. If they are permitted to call, their calls are monitored by a security person. See, it's always the security, you guys. And let's go back to all the first-hand accounts we have of the security guards R-ing the young girls or the women. It's a crime. Those are crimes. Security person to make sure they don't say where they are, excuse me, or how they are really doing. Letters out must be read by security personnel before they are posted. If a member is having a hard time making it in the R.P.F., no problem. There is always the R.P.F.'s R.P.F. The only reason for that organization is to totally break the member to make them pliable, children too, and willing to follow any command. Sleep deprivation, filthy food, in quarters, not being allowed any personal time. Imagine that the governments of the world are signing off on this. I know who rules the world, but I mean, this is beyond hidden in plain sight. Hard work, no socialization are all part of this program. I have heard many horror stories of friends that I've been in. Here are just a few quotes. It's going on right now in 2024. From Tanya Burden. In the R.P.F, you were labeled treasonous. Oh, I want to add in too that children, little boys or little girls that are sexually assaulted numerous times by adults get put into the R.P.F. Told they were out 2D. And why did they pull in the sexual abuse by the adults? And then it's covered up, not reported, which all of those are crimes. In the R.P.F, you were labeled treasonous and forced to work 18-hour days, 7 days a week. That also is to entrain your mind. And oftentimes received only rice and beans and water. I'm surprised more people haven't died in this Scientology, honestly. I mean, you're going to have, even as a child, you might have low electrolytes. You're definitely going to be malnourished. And a lot of diseases can come in when you're underweight like this, for a man or a woman. That's why we see so many Scientologists that are so skinny. It's very sad. During this time, I personally observed a person chained to pipes in the boiler room. You know, that's one of their favorite places. In the Fort Harrison building. Imagine that the Clearwater PD stood out there with Rinder and, trying to intimidate protesters back in the anonymous days and afterwards, knowing that there were people chained to pipes in the boiler room. And if they didn't know, that means they're not doing good detective work. In the Fort Harrison building for a period of weeks. In the R.P.F, I saw people screaming and crying during the constant auditing on the e-meter. Does this strike you as people that are in their right mind? Doing this to people? R.P.F prisoners were forced to undergo auditing in order to audit out their evil purposes against Hubbard and Scientology. I cried virtually the whole time I was in the R.P.F. Oh, you guys, go check out Hannah Whitfield. Her accounts are a little bit old, but they're very telling, especially about the babies that died in the nurseries. And she surmised some of them could have been for black magic. It's all on public view. From Hannah Whitfield, certain infractions cause the person responsible to be assigned to the R.P.F. The R.P.F's R.P.F. Kind of like the hole, Placed in the lower boiler room under the Fort Harrison Hotel. You're telling me that those cops didn't hear people screaming down there? You're telling me that the Clearwater PD did not hear the people screaming from the boiler room? Chief Slaughter? Among the boilers and hot water pipes, which rambled and hissed 24 hours a day. The place was only dimly lit. It consisted of interconnecting spaces through which one had to crawl on hands and knees, at times, past or underneath huge pipes and massive 10-foot-high boilers. It had a dark, forbidding, somewhat scary place. One of my buddies was assigned to the R.P.F's R.P.F for 2 months for refusing to divulge confidential information for which she had been bonded in the Guardian's office. The Guardian's office. Isn't that where Mike Rinder was stationed for many years? She was kept in that space, excommunicado, for the entire time, with limited bathing and toilet privileges. Boy, they're really into that, aren't they? To make people feel disgusting. They do it to children as well. They won't allow the children to bathe or change their clothes. Right there, that's child neglect. She was kept in that space, excommunicado, for the entire time, with limited bathing and toilet privileges. It's a human rights violation right there. All the time being threatened and verbally harassed by R.P.F superiors. People need to name names. I'm really sick of this. Oh, there was an R.P.F superior, or, oh, this upper level manager. Give their effing names, bro. Stop protecting them. She finally emerged a broken, silent, sullen person. That's what they wanted. They wanted to break her. Clearwater PD is totally fine with all this. Telling me they didn't hear the screams? Come on, you guys. Who soon after managed to escape from the R.P.F and the Fort Harrison Hotel. Her name is Lynn Froyland. I wish more of these ex-Scientologists would come out and speak. Especially all the children that were essayed. I'm beginning to think that 98% of the children have been sexually assaulted by the adults. You know, considering Clearwater PD, LAPD, FBI, Homeland Security, all these other PDs, considering the fact that they called children adults in small bodies, what did you think was going to happen? From all my research, I think at least 98% of these children were sexually assaulted by the adults. It's on record. It's on public record. Go look it up. It's real easy to look up. It's going on right now in 2024. From our good friend Susie Nefertiti, a.k.a. Mary Abadi. Oh, I listened to some of her stuff the other day. An average day in the R.P.F. Oh, it's amazing how many women are in the R.P.F, isn't it? Were they sexually assaulted? Because they do that too to the women or the boys. They make them go to the R.P.F when they tell on the rapist. Basically, it consists in getting up early before everybody and going to bed very late after everybody else. Sleep deprivation. Just like they use in basic training, just how they use in special forces and all these other mind control places. Fatigue is omnipresent. It's easier to control people that are tired. How much were they keeping the world up the last 4 years? Remember that? Constant alerts about so-and-so. And oh, now we've got a high security this and a high security that. It's easier to control people. Just 7 hours sleep is not enough to compensate for forced labor work in a hell cadence. The person's resistance, even in good health conditions, begins to decay. As I said, I'm surprised more people didn't die in these camps, unless they did bury the bodies somewhere on these properties. You just never know. At this rate, after a week of forced pace, I would not wish to my worst enemies except Miscavige and other bastards. I wonder who the other bastards were. One does wonder, don't they? I felt my strengths lowering, cramps becoming more and more frequent. That's lack of nutrition and just overuse. What is that? Magnesium deficiency. I should know right now. Were all the more painful since I had to continue running no matter what. Yeah, that's magnesium deficiency and overuse, lactic acid. I can't run anymore, but I know. Aching all over, sweat had also become a fearful enemy. Florida's hot and humid climate, with the accelerated rhythm of constant effort. Oh, you could get dehydrated as well. Provoked an important sweating, which was responsible for an accumulation of bacteria. The thing was to protect ourselves from potential wounds at all costs. How is this like, I'm sorry, but this reminds me very similar to the, I mean, I'm not saying it's exactly, but it's very similar to the concentration camps. It's similar. I'm not saying it's exactly like that, but it's very similar. No preventative measures was ever taken, of course. No medicine, not even antiseptics or antibiotics were allowed in case of injury or illness. A lot of people actually did die in the R.P.F. That should be investigated. But, maybe the police are too busy. Children dying, people dying, not a big deal. Action station would occur by 7 a.m. All I had was 5 minutes to be ready. Get dressed with a dirty black trousers, a dirty black t-shirt, and remember the black ribbon around the left arm. Didn't this armband seems very familiar to me. You guys remember Michael Jackson used to put those bands around his arms? You really research into it, you'll see it's not that great. It's diabolical. And it just seems like this was used somewhere else. Dirty black trousers, a dirty black t-shirt, and remember the black ribbon around the left arm. Well, like Jews, with a star sewn on their torn coat during the Second World War of evil memory. Yeah, it's like the Scarlet Letter, too. Or like the red letter sewn on the heroine's dress of a famous novel, The Scarlet Letter, from Nathaniel Hawthorne. Standing for adulteress, the letter stigmatized the woman's sin, heavily reproved and socially condemned by Puritan moral prevailing in 17th century Boston. Hester Perns is sentenced for adultery to be put in the stocks. She is to forever wear the symbol of her sin, the big red letter A sewn onto the bodice of her dress. Also, it reminds me of all these young girls or women that are ARD in these Middle Eastern countries. So, and I'm not saying all the men are diabolical, but there's a handful of men that are, and they go and they are the young girl or the woman, and because of their, religious and cultural type of beliefs, now the woman is, she's, how do you say it, impure, because she's not a V anymore. So now, a lot of times, they want to, I know I'm going off, you guys, but they want to, what is that called? They do, they have to keep their family's honor intact. So, because the young girl or the woman got AR'd by another man, instead of them going and taking out the man that did it, they kill the girl or the woman because she has made their family honor like no longer any good. What a system to encourage the R-ing of young girls or women, right? I keep saying it's the secretiveness. But if a young girl or a woman does get AR'd, they're going to more than likely want to keep it to themselves because and I'm talking about some of these Middle Eastern countries or in Africa. It's more like the Muslim, very, very strict beliefs. Not all Muslims do that, but I'm just saying. It also reminds me what's going on in Scientology with the misogyny. In the R.P.F., the dark ribbon is a representation of discrimination, the legal and arbitrary segregation of the person. The person is plainly ostracized. It is the same thing, really, except that we no longer live in the 17th century. Of course, the R.P.F. is contrary to the rights of man. Yeah, and it also violates how many United States laws? You know, those things called laws, LAW. Of course, the R.P.F. is contrary to the rights of man, violates every constitution, and must be forbidden by the governments, would they only bother to assume their responsibilities and make proper legislation so that no intern prison belonging to any group or religion called a labor camp, gulag, or R.P.F. be tolerated on their soils. I guess that the will of the politics would be awakened when a politician's daughter or son, you guys don't know who you're dealing with here, to be ensnared by a cult and be interned in one of those camps, or worse, were to commit suicide. The R.P.F. illegal forced labor camp is all the more intolerable since this humiliation is presented as an expiation for adepts' so-called crimes, in which is forced to accept his need for redemption. On top of that, imagined by a perverted madman, sadistic and paranoid, schizophrenic guru. But let's come back to the story. Yeah, imagine people following this psychopath. His policies should have been made illegal a long time ago. As a precautionary measure, I always wore a clean t-shirt underneath the black and dirty one. Fortunately, I had a dozen t-shirts in my suitcase. Every night after the 30-second shower, oh my God, I coated my body with talc in order to protect my skin against sweat. We all suffered from heavy sweating. Imagine you get a rash. Wouldn't you get rashes? I recall this young woman terribly suffering from an important infection which had been developing under her breasts. Instead of healing, the wound had been expanding to such a degree that purulent blisters had reached her navel. Oh, poor thing. When I saw that infection, I told her, "Here, have some talc. Take mine." She looked at me puzzled. "I think you should wear a cotton t-shirt under your bra in order to isolate your breasts. That may help to stop the infection." I added. She answered that she didn't have any, so I spontaneously gave her 2 t-shirts of mine. You can wash your t-shirt every night, so you will always have a clean and dry t-shirt for the day after. She had a sort of trembling. "Why are you doing this? Why are you helping me?" she asked. With the passing of time, I realized how pathetic was this woman's reaction. That's so sad. It reminds me of MK Ultra, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. It's what they want. How was it possible that someone should help her? She had lost the notion of solidarity, something very present in regular prisons or prison camps. To me, it was just a matter of assisting someone in danger. Her infection had definitely become too large to ignore it. Unlike others, I felt compassion. In the R.P.F., it's every man for himself. It's just how they want it. Among the 8 girls living in the same room, I was the only one to offer some help, but each girl was having her share of suffering. Each girl was trying to survive the best she could. And then I had just arrived to the R.P.F. Therefore, I was not weakening yet. I could still afford to help someone. We used to take a bus, taking us to the Fort Harrison. That bus was infested with cockroaches. First, I refused to sit down, since the bus was crawling with cockroaches, which did not mind to step on us, but then with fatigue overpowering me, I relinquished to sit down. Every moment of rest had become a priority, so we all just merely move our hands or feet once in a while to dismiss bigger ones. Imagine that the Clearwater PD knows this stuff's going on. Of course, if you do have decent cops that want to do something, they can't just take on a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They would need a lot of help. At the R.P.F. mess room, in which meals are eaten in the armed forces, it was a matter of feeding ourselves the best we could. Cereals in the form of unappetizing porridges. I bet Miscavige doesn't eat porridge every day. I bet Tom Cruise doesn't eat porridge every day. Were proposed to hold out, and despite my disgust in eating solid food in the morning, I reluctantly swallowed every kind of soups or pig swills as long as they had milk in it. The RPFers in charge of bringing the food was warmly welcomed by everybody since he had managed to find a milk gallon. I watched as he was being applauded and sadly deduced that milk was not an obvious foodstuff in the RPF. Muster or roll call would then take place. I really wish she'd cover some of the ages, the people in here, because you guys know the R.P.F. and the R.P.F.'s R.P.F. has children. Yep, right now in 2024. The shabby-looking Gulag Battalion, pastiche military muster for review or inspection. Imagine that fat cow, slob loser, black teeth, bald, paranoid, schizophrenic loser Hubbard could never pass inspection. I know this from intuition, just based on what I've read about him and what I've listened to in the Barefaced Messiah book. Everyone is supposed to answer his name by "Hi, sir." Yeah, there's no women in Scientology. You call everyone sir. Little bit of misogyny, anyone? Any delay, be it 1 second, is heavily sanctioned. Put these fools in the real military, they would eat them alive. The sorry spectacle of 4 RPF tottering columns was a wretched sight. 20 people struggling to stand to attention looked far more as an East German extermination camp than a glorious, glittering Corps d'Elite Sea Org members. Could not help thinking that it was impossible, avoiding to relate the cortege of mere shadows that we had become, with the flashy group in full uniform pictured in the cult propaganda magazine, and supposed to lead mankind on the road to total freedom. Wow, they actually use their pictures in the magazines? Wow. The audacity. Ironically, we were imprisoned and carrying the same chains we'd all come to set man free from. Quite obviously, there was a horrendous booby trap I could not figure out. The first standing order of the day was to clean the Fort Harrison stairs. Slave labor, you guys. Multi-billion-dollar corporation. Slave labor. It's how they get the money. I was given a bucket, a floor cloth, and a twin, in this case a very young lady, barely 18 years old. Another minor. So she probably was in there before she was 18. Come on, you guys. As we started to clean the steps one by one on our knees, She asked me the reason of my R.P.F assignment. I answered in a relaxed, offhand manner that since I wanted to leave her the best way out I had come up with was to violate the SO ethical code. That is to say, never have sexual relationship outside marriage. There they go again with that. Sick bunch, man. So she had sexual relations with someone outside of marriage. It's okay if the men rape the women, though, or the girls. That's fine. Told you guys they're obsessed with this, and they don't have any problem with the little girls or little boys being R'd. No problem at all with it. I went out 2D esoteric language for having sexual intercourse. And you know what? I added we didn't even have time to materialize because they caught us just before we did. It's funny. She burst out laughing and she told me, you guys probably understand that. I'm not going to go there. You should understand. She told me her story. Roughly, her situation was the following. She didn't agree with some decisions from Upline's management. Upline's management. No names, of course. I think a lot of you ex-Scientologists should just rat them all out. She stood fast and didn't allow herself to be swayed, thus sent to the R.P.F. See, you're not allowed your own thoughts. That's the thought stopping, you see? Being born in the cult, having known but the cult perspectives projected by her towards the exterior world were extremely reduced. I have no diploma. That's how they want it. I could never work in the WOG world. It's a racist term to signify everything that do not belong to the cult. Do you have any family outside? I ventured. Yes, my mother is in England. I don't know her and she is declared. A person declared is a person arbitrarily declared a suppressive being by the cult, i.e. ostracized. I don't have the right to see her. Besides, could I adapt myself in a country I do not know, with a mother whose face I don't even recall? How'd she get into the cult? Did the father bring her in? If I failed to get in tune, everything would be over for me. I have no choice. I must endure. See, that's what they want people to think. It's really sad. And the government sign off on it. Imagine that. This lucid, clear-minded 18-year-old young lady with her long blonde hair saying that she had no future outside the cult was deeply moving. Suddenly I realized the horror of isolation to which every youngster born and raised in the cult are abandoned to. They can't escape, and how could they? They are prisoners inside of the life they will never get to know outside. Why do you think they keep going for the children, you guys? She glanced a fearful look at me. Was I going to betray a confidence she shouldn't have ever made? I reassured her with a smile. Don't worry, I won't say anything. Well, the outside world is not that terrible, you know. After all, I've come from out there. I'll never forget her sad and resigned look. She said dreamy, yes, maybe, who knows? In fact, she was an exec from CMO Int, high executive from the International Commodore Messengers Org. Oh, there we go again. Very senior org in the cult. Imagine they punished her because she was having sex. They jealous they couldn't have sex with her? A young, beautifully blonde girl? She was to stand up for me once when one of the R.P.F. warder, names, guys, names, took it out on me with no apparent reason. Psychopaths, man, they do breed psychopaths. She literally jumped on the bigot. If you don't leave her alone immediately, I swear I'll remember you when I get out of here. And you know that I'll get out before you do. R.P.F. warders, They should have just called them wardens. Are on the R.P.F. program too. Anyway, the guy was nailed to the spot. Not only did he forget all about me, but everyone kept a respectable distance ever since. It is true that in the cult complex hierarchy, CMO int execs have almost every power. Thinking it over, I think I gave her a little hope. It wasn't that bad outside. The day would continue with the cleaning and scouring of every toilet of Fort Harrison building. They love their slave labor, don't they? You see, they get the children to do all the cleaning and the RPFers. All that money they could pay outside services to do it. They don't want to do that. Then they can't humiliate people or degrade them. Reserved for the public Scientologists coming from all around the world for services. Mind you guys, they have children doing auditing here. Children auditors, just like Serge Del Mar. So anyone acting like they don't know about the child abuse, you know what you can do. We actually like to do it since it was deliciously air-conditioned inside, and frankly, compared to other R.P.F. hardship, sponging up sinks had almost become our idea of having fun. I only feared that someone should recognize me in such a slave getup, with a hand brush bent over a bowl-shaped part of the toilet. A misfortune buddy almost fainted when cleaning a mirror. She stopped dead, staring at her own image with horror. Well, the poor girl didn't really look well, but now she just had turned green. Imagine how shocking that would be. We were all looking dreadful, dirty, shaggy-haired, just how they want them to. Especially with the women, you notice that? And we're quite in a bad shape. The thing was to carefully avoid meeting our face. She started to cry. She just could not afford to break down. She was putting herself at risk by sobbing in front of Scientologists. It was awfully bad PR, bad public relations. Suddenly one of us said with her nasal Oklahoma twang, "Well, what should I say? Look at me. I look like Frankenstein, whereas you only look as if you had seen him." Everybody laughed, and the poor girl somehow pulled herself together. She then cautiously kept avoiding every mere reflection. There was a sort of solidarity, but very rare and punctual. Relationships were mostly lived in terms of power struggle. Orders were constantly shouted. We were hustled from morning to evening, no slowing down even in the sun. Sanctions would shower on us. Like I said, I don't know how more people don't just drop dead in this. Take a lap, take 2 laps, take 5 laps. A lap consists in running around the Fort Harrison garage ramp. Wonder how many times the Clearwater PD drove by seeing these people running around the garage while they were in their air-conditioned police vehicles. The mere young lady had a hard time to follow the pace. She would stumble over, fall, get herself hurt, and would always be behind the pack, late. And I would tremble for her. R.P.F's bosun warder, names guys, names, was pretending not to see her. So I thought that she would be spared, as she was obviously of a frail nature. In fact, it's highly probable that her fall was programmed. I witnessed an odd conversation looking like bets and racehorses. That one, I give her 2 weeks. I don't give her another week myself. Well, I will never know what happens when the person can't take any longer. Maybe she's assigned to the R.P.F's R.P.F. For I chucked out before it ever became my turn. I don't even dare to think about it. There were the dangerous tasks to perform. The garbage detail was particularly strenuous for the fair sex. Listen to this, you guys. Men, these are not men, you guys, I'm just telling you, would challenge us making fun of our poor efforts. Those are not real men, because real men protect women. These men don't even have a real P.E. You know what? Making fun of our poor efforts to get up enormous and filthy garbage cans. Some girls would exhaust themselves out in vain. I would just save my strength protecting the best that I could, my fingers, my feet, my body in general. An accident might happen. That's what I've been talking about. And no treatment would be granted. Furthermore, there is no hospital in the R.P.F. There is not even an emergency kit. There was a definite lack of everything salary. Already reduced to the third part, was suspended for the vast majority of the R.P.Fers. They already don't even get very much money. And they reduced that. All of this is illegal. I don't care what anybody says. What's happening here, this is not legal. So everybody would soon become indigent. Suddenly you can no longer buy cigarettes, only unrestricted items allowed. Your toothpaste, soap, or deodorant. Would you allow me to stress that women still having their periods find it extremely degrading, not having enough cash to buy a box of Tampax? Wow, you guys. Some women suffer from cycle troubles due to stress and fatigue. Some symptoms occurred in concentration camps. Oh, same symptoms occurred in concentration camps, yeah. At least this is what I could experiment for myself, and I was utterly happy to have some Tampaxes in my car gloves locker. How humiliating it is to find ourselves in complete poverty when one has given away a fortune for the cause and is subsequently working as a beast of burden. What a despair it is to notice one is reduced to slavery, whereas one had come in pushed by the winds of freedom in order to align in the ranks of those working so that man would be set free. The end of the day would be a piece of anthology. As I said, there was a special gulag training. 5 hours training, 5 hours indoctrination. This is a retraining camp, just like North Korea. Such a training was mandatory, of course, and consisted of a cortege of forced confessions. There's overts and withholds, of imagined crimes and treacheries of every kind. Mental torture called OWs, yep. Overts and withholds. By any means, I knew that before I got there, I had to restudy the same HCOBs and PLs, gurus' nonsense. I already knew by heart. Well, then I shall continue to act stupid. I would spend hours on a 10 pages long bulletin called Keeping Scientology Working. Scientology is not working anymore. I hope you guys wake up before it's too late for you. And pretended to be busy by turning the dictionary pages, which would allow me to remain seated most of the time. You see, in the R.P.F. and other gulags, luxury is motionless. The thing is just to remain in complete stillness. Moreover, R.P.F.'s indoctrination is delayed, but who wants to think about it? Anyway, 2 R.P.Fers had noticed my little game, and as they were up to the same one themselves, we would once in a while glance at each other in beaming mirth. That's what being called natural outrudes. Esoteric expression, meaning negative, conniving attitude, being a party of something or someone. At the end of the day, coinciding with the end of special gulag indoctrination, we were supposed to, well, at least it was highly encouraged, take the floor to say how pleased we all were and how wonderful and fabulous it was to follow a convict's program, without forgetting to stress we were all thankful to hope that one day redemption would occur, thanks to the marvelous technology of the best friend Earth had ever bore. I always refused to participate to this farce, where we had on top of that to applaud everything fantastic gains. I would simply put a mongoloid grin on my face, which actually fitted very well on submission grounds, in approval of every nonsense that could be heard. As long as I seemed to agree to the whole masquerade, and as long as I looked vaguely stupid, I knew I would be allowed to vogue over relatively peaceful waters. Anyhow, I was delighted. I had done some theater acting when I wondered, under the false aspect of a tranquil lake, furious roaring 40th currents, and over howling 50th wind streams were preparing devastating tidal waves. You can read her full testimony as well as others here. I'll have to check that. Before you go, I would like for you to hear in your own voice how this affected her even after being out of Scientology for years. The psychological pain that many of us have been is why we protest so hard. This is Susie Nefertiti. Go check out that video. I didn't really want to do a reaction to it, but it's pretty good. Thanks for coming by. I hope you have been educated a little. Your comments are welcomed as always. Here are a few references by Hubbard about the R.P.F. Just click the titles. You know, the R.P.F. that doesn't exist, right? The R.P.F.'s R.P.F. for children that doesn't exist, and the children that are in the R.P.F. that doesn't exist, right? Or how about the children in the Sea Org that don't exist? Homeland Security are going to do anything about those children that are in the Sea Org that don't exist, but they really do exist? Breaking all kinds of laws? Being abused, neglected, indoctrinated, not allowed to go to a public school? Okay, I will leave a link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Peace.